thank you all for coming to the candidate forum. I did not expect this big a turnout, so awesome. Thank you teachers as well for bringing your students. So this is a candidate forum. These three gentlemen here are all running for the state senate district. It's called Essex-Orleans. Richford and Montgomery, I believe, are part of that district, whereas the rest of Franklin County is part of Franklin district. But these gentlemen want to represent you guys, your community, in the state senate in Montpelier. So the way this is going to work is they're going to introduce themselves, and then you guys are going to have the opportunity to ask them questions about their experiences, their beliefs, why, what they want to do if they're elected, anything else that you guys think is important or that you're curious about. So, Mr. Starr, please, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Liz. And tell me if you can hear me okay, because this mic's pretty loud.
Yeah, a little closer.
I'm Bobby Starr, and I live just over the hill in North Troy, Vermont. I've been your representative or your senator for 14 years. I'm a Democrat. I'm running on both the Democrat and Republican ticket this year. I chair the Senate Agricultural Committee and Rural Development, as well as in the afternoon serving on the Appropriations Committee, which looks at and approves all the financial and spending issues in the state of Vermont. And it's great to be here with you young people. And as Liz said, it's great to see a good crowd because someday you folks will be sitting in our positions, hopefully, and it's good to be here in Richford and take part in this forum.
Good morning. I'm Senator John Rogers. I live in Glover. That's where I grew up, on a dairy farm, and I have my own small construction business, and just this year my family and I have started growing industrial hemp. So I think both Senator Starr and I come from the rural area, and one of our main focuses in the State House has been rural Vermont, because we are much different than the urban areas. And actually I went to Sacred Heart High School, and I remember coming to Richford and playing soccer, and that was the only sport I played, but I also came here to watch when our high school came over here to play basketball. So it's kind of interesting to be back in the gym all these years later. So as Senator Starr said, I think it's great to see young people interested. One of our challenges to preserve our democracy is to make sure young people get that sense of civic duty and sign up to vote. And it's important to know your candidates and what they stand for, and get out there and make your voices heard. That's what democracy is all about. So thanks for coming out.
Because I can't see all of you, I'd like to stand up just for the introduction portion, please. I'm Ron Horton. I'm from Jay, just across the hill also. I've been up in Jay for 7 years. I finally got back to Vermont after leaving for 30 years with my company in 1983. I was with Delta Airlines for 30 years, and we pulled out of Vermont in 1983. I came back in 2012, and surprisingly enough, a real Delta Airlines plane came back with me, so they're now flying a real Delta flight out of Burlington. So my focus is on getting Vermont more affordable for everybody. I think we all know, even people that are not political, we know that it's hard to make a living here, it's hard to keep your homes here. And I have plans in place on my website with detailed information about how to make it more affordable, bring more jobs in, create revenue for the state that will help reduce our taxes and fully fund our schools. I do have also cards over here on the windowsill. Please feel free to take one on your way out. It'll explain a little bit about what my position is and give you a website that you can go to and hear more about me.
about half an hour for question and answer. And all the three candidates will get a chance to answer every question. I will start with a question that one of my classes came up with, and it's a question that I think a lot of students ask, is why should they care? Why should they pay attention to politics? Because a lot of them say, well, it doesn't matter, it doesn't have any impact on my life, so why should I care?
Great question, and you really, you may not care right now, but when you get to be of age, it makes a big difference, because everything seems like the older you get, the more you realize how important who you elect to represent you in office becomes. Because if you think of like your school here, it's funded by your parents and your neighbors, but a lot of that comes out of Montpelier. And it depends on who you send there, which is politics, electing political people like ourselves. How the money flows and the regulations happen, and like Act 46 that's being carried out right now, where the state is, Department of Ed is making people, school districts combine together. I didn't vote for that, even though I chaired the Senate Education Committee 8 or 10 years ago in Montpelier. I served 21 years on the local school board. I believe that this would do harm to our public education, which I support fully. But that's politics that drove that bus. The rural areas got beat up on, basically, and the more urban areas will be fine. Like if you lived in Chittenden County, or say Burlington, where they may have 4 schools, and they combine those into 3, well, what's a big deal? But if you're up here in northern Vermont and they close your little high school, like say Richford, and you had to travel, say, to Swanton or over to even Enosburg. Enosburg wouldn't be too bad, but still not home, and you wouldn't see these things on the wall where you get plaques and honors for your sports teams and things. And so it's real important that you pay attention, because it is important. The older you get, the more you realize this.
Yeah, it's extremely important, and that's why I say you really need to know who your candidates are and that they have values like you have. Otherwise, you're going to lose those things that you value. I believe I'm the only senator that still actively fishes and hunts. And so hunting is very important to me, and Vermont's heritage and traditions are very important to me. So I fight very hard to protect those. And so if you value something like that, then you need to support people who value those things. We have a whole bunch of people in this state, and actually active and organized groups, who don't think we should be allowed to hunt or trap. And so those are deep-rooted values in Vermont. It's how I grew up on the dairy farm. We didn't really go very far or take lots of vacations. So what we did for enjoyment when we had time off was hunting, fishing, hiking, boating, and that sort of outdoor stuff. And so extremely important to me, and so I look out for the interest of people who think like that. It's also very important because some people in politics think that we should have systems that we don't necessarily agree with, higher taxes to support more programs that we may or may not agree with. So it's extremely important to be involved and to pay attention to who those people are, and not only what they say they will do, but what they actually do. because as you know, many politicians say they're going to do one thing, and then when they get in office, they don't follow through. And honesty and integrity is super important to me. And you won't find a single person in the State House that will say that I ever misled them or lied to them. And I will make sure that that is true when I leave politics, that there will be nobody there able to say that I lied to them, because that's not how I do business. I'm upfront, straightforward, and honest with everybody. I think that's extremely important.
Why should you care about politics? Well, it's one of these things that if you don't voice your opinions, you're giving your power away. And I think especially at this age group, now I have a 19-year-old at home right now. She's in college, but she's home for the break. And we've had a lot of discussions about politics, and she calls herself not political, but if you look at her Facebook page, she's the most non-political political person I've ever met. And I think probably that's the same way with a lot of you. You are curious, but you don't have the knowledge yet as far as the individual policies and issues are concerned. And that's what I'd like to see happening in forums like this, where we have so many of you in the audience that are bringing your curiosity to us. I think a big reason why you should get involved in politics is Parkland High School. Now, those kids are rocking the world right now, and you can join them in that effort. They are a tremendous bunch of kids. I was down at the youth march down at Montpelier and heard some of the speeches that they gave. Just blew me away. So for anybody who says this generation is not with it, I say, well, I can't say it here. But I do believe you will gain so much in just learning the issues and getting out there and voting, bringing your friends to vote, making sure your parents know the issues too. Now, when I grew up, as many people did, I grew up with the political beliefs of my parents. That is something I would like to see most everybody get away from as soon as possible. It took me quite a while. I had a mother who pulled the red lever every time. And that means back then you could do that. You could pull one lever at the voting booth and vote for all Democrats or all Republicans. And that's something that I have never done. I've always voted for the individual based on what I felt they were going to be able to bring to us. For instance, I'm an independent running right now. I did run on the Democratic ticket for the primaries because I lean Democratic, progressive. But I'm on the American Independent ticket. I'm also the only candidate in the area here that's endorsed by Planned Parenthood. Another problem that you should get involved in a lot. I don't think government belongs in our doctor's offices, our bedrooms, or our churches. And without getting involved, that's where government's going to be. So I'd like to see you all here, and I encourage you to learn as much as you possibly can about the issues and candidates so you can vote responsibly.
Thank you. All right, open to questions from the audience. Who has a question? I'll pass the mic back so we can all hear you. And if you could please introduce yourself, like what your name is and what grade you're in.
My name's Kayla. I'm in grade 11. Are you for changing anything about gun laws?
Anybody in particular? Okay. You know, I think what the country is showing, and the latest poll that I saw was upwards to 90% of people are in favor of some type of common sense gun regulations. Now, I've been accused in the past when I said this of being anti-gun. I'm not. I'm a veteran. I love shooting guns. I think they're great fun. I'm not a hunter. I thought I was 100 once, but then I was building a house and I was out in the woods thinking about how much stuff I needed to build in the house. So I go back to the house and thinking about how much I needed to be out in the woods hunting. So I had to choose one. So I built the house and sold the gun. But my lead line on gun regulations is I love my kids more than I love my guns. So I look for ways to make our country safer. I do respect the rights of people to go out in the woods and hunt. I have a program that I've put on my website that suggests that we should limit the kinds of guns that are manufactured. I don't believe that we should be making 22s look like M16s so that someone who has suffered a traumatic experience socially would grab one of these guns and feel like they're Rambo and go in and mow us down where we might be, concerts or school or wherever. So I think there are ways to generate conversations that will help everyone involved. We have ways of doing this. We just need to sit down and discuss it.
My belief that we don't need new gun laws in Vermont. We need to enforce the gun laws that are on the books. S55 last year requires a universal background check. It was already a violation of federal law to sell a firearm to a person who is prohibited. So in my mind, if that prohibited person is going to buy a gun, he's already planning on breaking a federal law. Why would breaking a second law stop them? We know that heroin is illegal, but yet we have a huge opiate epidemic in the state of Vermont. Criminals are going to continue to do what criminals want to do. What much of the gun legislation that's being proposed and some of the gun legislation that was passed last year will not affect criminals, and it will not make Vermonters any safer. But what it did do is take rights away from law-abiding firearms owners. This country was founded by our forefathers who picked up their guns and fought against the oppression of the king and the royal rule. And I believe the Second Amendment is just as important as the First Amendment. And if we lose our Second Amendment, perhaps the First Amendment will be next. These firearms that people are now saying need to be banned from ownership by Americans have been around for many, many years. Yet mass shootings and school violence has only started recently. And so what has changed? My belief is that what has changed is before we didn't have the internet, we didn't have social media, we didn't have smartphones. And so maybe the First Amendment is the one that should be restricted. So if we gave the government and law enforcement the ability to tap everybody's phones and computers, well, then maybe they could stop everybody that was going to do something horrible. But are we willing to give up our privacy and our freedom for safety? That's the question. And so I think the Constitution is a package, and that if you start tearing away any of the threads, you lose the protections that the Constitution affords us. And I've always stuck up for everybody's constitutional rights, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom of speech, making sure all people are treated equally as far as the marriage equality, death with dignity, a woman's right to choose, on and on. So my perspective is if we continue to enforce the laws that are already on the books, people who are prohibited shouldn't get guns. We have to focus on criminals. The biggest problem right now in the state, and I think in the country, we have a big problem with violence, especially domestic violence. That needs to be tackled. And we also have a huge problem with suicide. We have a huge problem with people that are not getting the care and support that they need for trauma and mental health and such things that are leading to suicide. So my hope is to focus on the real problems and not the tool.
And during this last session, we had actually 3 bills that came through dealing with firearms. The first one dealt with domestic violence. If you were mixed up in that and you threatened another person, you wouldn't be able to purchase and own firearms. Actually, your firearms could be taken. The other is mental health. People that are under care for mental health would not be allowed to have firearms. And I supported those 2 bills. S55, it really took, well, for one thing, if you're 18 to 21, you couldn't go and purchase a gun. But yeah, you could be a police officer and you could carry a gun. You could go in the military and carry a gun. But if you lived in Richford and you went to work and you decided, well, I'd like a new rifle for deer hunting, you'd have to go home and ask your dad or mom to go buy that for you. Well, I didn't think that was right. And along with a host of other rights that were going to be taken away from people in general. So I didn't support S55, and I didn't ask NRA, what their opinion was of this, and they certainly didn't tell me, but they must have felt that I voted right because they are one of the outfits that endorsed my candidacy as for senator. So anyways, I think every bill, every issue like gun rights, you have to check it over, check with the people that you represent, see how they feel about it, and everyone is different. And there may be only one line in a bill that could really mess you up if it passed. And so every issue is different, and every bill that deals with the same issue could be different. So that's where I stand on that issue.
Okay, thank you. Who else has a question?
You guys are mostly from the other side of the mountain. So I'm just wondering why Richford and Montgomery are like 2 towns alone out of Franklin County that are represented by seemingly an entirely different district. Now, I'm not saying that people on the other side of the mountain are necessarily far different than us, but it seems like everything is generally divided along county lines. So why are our 2 towns represented by representatives from a sort of far-off geographical location, whereas the rest of our county is all blocked together? I don't really understand why the lines are...
It's all got to do with population. And what's happening is the northern part of Vermont is slowly losing population, so they keep making the district bigger. Down in Chittenden County, they have a pretty small footprint, and they have 6 senators in it, which is also wrong. So yes, I feel your pain, and I sometimes feel a little neglectful because I don't get over to Richford that much, because it is crossing over the mountains. This area of Vermont is very similar, but it is like the Great Divide there, and so we are a bit removed, but it's all based on population.
Do you want to go second?
I didn't know.
John's right as far as the population goes, and what's important, I think, is that we don't lose a senator from up in northern Vermont. If Orleans, Essex did not come over and pick up Richford and Montgomery, we also do Wilcott and Lamoille County. what would happen is between all of us, we would lose a senator because you have too many people in Franklin County for 2 senators. So some of your southern towns in Franklin County would go to Chittenden County. And then Chittenden County would move to Addison County. And so it's important that we don't lose a senator up here because we're already outnumbered pretty bad. And as far as representing Richford, Montgomery, I've represented Montgomery for 40 years, I guess. Because when I was in the House, I used to represent Montgomery and always got along very well. And what's happened in the Senate is Richford and Montgomery don't just have 2 senators, you actually have 4. Because the 2 from Franklin County are just as involved in an issue. Say an issue comes up here in Richford. You go into that with 4 senators on the same side, which is really good because a lot of communities only have 2 senators or 1 senator. But you take Burlington, Chittenden County, they have 6 senators. So it may seem unfair, but politically, and we talked about politics earlier, politically, I think you're well represented when issues come up affecting your community or your area because we work very good together, Franklin and Orleans County.
Yeah, I feel your pain. I feel personally that it should be county by county that is represented, and not put it on population. Like Bobby says, we are outgunned in respect to Chittenden County, and we all know that Chittenden County runs Vermont in a big way. So if we could somehow change that, that would, in my eyes, that'd be great. On the personal side, though, I'd rather not lose Richford and Montgomery because they've been very good to me in the voting in the past. I've beaten at least one candidate over here twice now, so I like it, and I come over here a lot. I love this area. I think you have a lot to offer. So it does make the district extremely big, as Bobby and John will both contest. When we have to drive all of Essex County and all of Orleans County, and then also include Walcott, Montgomery, and Richford, it spreads us a little thin. And I think if we could just district it so that it would just be counties, that would be great. I don't see it happening, but like I said, I feel your pain.
Okay, we have time for, I think, one more question.
Bobby, you want to start?
Who has a
I
question?
think you're first.
Again, say your name and your grade.
I'm Ryan Sanborn in 9th grade. And I was wondering why, as a 14-year-old, why I had to be taxed off my paycheck, and what your take on that is, since I can't vote.
Tax on your paycheck?
Yeah, taxes taken off my paycheck, and I can't vote. So if I can't vote on tax, like how I'll be taxed or what I'll be taxed on, why should it be taken off?
I guess my first comeback to that is get used to it. It only gets worse. What you're talking about, I believe, is probably income tax, if you work and get paid. I guess we're all stuck with income taxes and state taxes, but I believe as a student, and it depends on whether your parents claim you or you claim yourself, But if your parents don't claim you, you would get probably most of your tax money back. But if your parents claim you, then they get which they probably earn a lot more than you do, so it'd be wise for them to claim you, and they would get a deduction on their taxes, but you get stuck paying your taxes. But that's, you know, the income tax, what we did this past year in the legislature, and I supported it along with the majority, was to if you were on Social Security, retired, then, and you earned under $46,000 a year, your Social Security that you received would not be counted in your tax base. And so that's going to help people reduce their income tax, but it won't help you, because I know you're not on Social Security in the 9th grade. But we have done things to try to reduce the taxes on our citizens, and the last 2 years have been very good, actually more than that on income tax. You know, as far as your personal situation and the rest of your students, you need to talk with your parents, see if they're going to claim you, or whichever way is the best deal is what's good for you.
I think we have about 2 or 3 more minutes till morning announcements start.
I'll try to be short. So all you got to do is work for like another 60 or so years, and they'll stop taxing that. So unfortunately, everybody that makes income pays in the taxes. But as Bobby said, I remember when my son was working one year, when he was still in high school, and he filed, and I think it seems like it was all of it back or most of it back. But if your parents claim you as a dependent, they may be taking that advantage. So just welcome to the adult world, and you'll be paying lots of taxes for lots of years now. Sorry.
Well, I'm going to start a little riot in a lot of the households here, because I'll tell you what we used to do, and what I still do actually with my 19-year-old, is that I take the difference of, if she was claiming herself, I would lose a deduction. By me claiming her, I get a big deduction. And whatever the difference is between not claiming her and claiming her goes to her. So you might end up in the long run talking to your parents and saying, how much am I saving you by being your dependent? I would like that back, please. And have them put it in your college fund. That's a good way to build that up. And again, I do have some information over here, and I have a lot of ideas on students also that you might like to look up on my website.
As a parent, that's a very interesting idea. So I want to thank everyone for coming. I will give you, gentlemen, if we have time, the opportunity for a short closing statement. I just wanted to let all you guys know that tomorrow morning, same time, same place, is going to be the House candidates. So I believe 4 of the 5 candidates were running for our local House, State House district, including a couple of folks who are very local here in the Richford, Berkshire area. So I would highly encourage all of you to attend that as well. So if you guys want to do a closing statement, go ahead.
You want to start? Sure.
Again, I applaud you for coming out. I really am happy to see so many of you involved and curious, and I want you to stay curious, because that's how you learn. More curiosity produces more questions, produces more answers. And please go home and have these discussions with your folks and get them to vote, bring friends to vote. It's easy to register to vote. If you're going to be 18 by November 6th, you can register to vote, and you can vote. So get out there and get involved. Become an activist. You can join Rights and Democracy and go to their rallies and so forth. All of this is available to you. Thank you for coming out.
I'll stand up for my closing statement too. Thanks for coming out. Great to see y'all. I hope you do stay interested and get involved. I would just like to say that as a kid that grew up in this area on a dairy farm, I still hunt and fish. I still have a skidder and a rack of chainsaws and actively manage my own forest. I've worked in construction, have my own business since I was in my 20s. I understand the people of this area because I am like the people of this area. I still get dirty every day. Doing stonework, there's no way to come home clean. I think society and even in the State House, a lot of times people who get dirty for a living are looked down on, and I think that's extremely unfortunate because the people who build houses, who farm, who do mechanic work, who are plumbers and electricians and all those dirty jobs, they're great jobs that you can live the American dream on, and they are important. Because I will bet that the CEOs of the biggest companies in the world can't fix their own toilet and they can't fix their own car. So everybody who is looking forward to working in the woods or working in the trades, don't be ashamed of it, be proud of it. They're great jobs, you can make a great living at it, and they're so important. Thank you.
Yep. Kids don't understand.
Again, I want to thank you all for coming out. It's been a real pleasure being here, getting your questions. And you should never be shy about asking a question. I can imagine you're sitting in your seat and you're saying, I don't want to ask that question, it's a dumb question. Well, there's no dumb questions. So if tomorrow morning when you have your forum, even if you think it's a dumb question, ask it. Get involved, participate. I think you've done a great job here this morning, probably better asking than we did answering. But anyhow, it's been a pleasure being back here in Richford, participating in this. And if I could, I'd like to represent you folks and your parents and our district once again and try to make our place of living a little bit better. So with that, thank you very much for being here, and thank you, Liz, for hosting us.